If I hire a guy at $500,000 a year, what am I really risking? So you'd think that's a big freaking salary. Why would it pay anyone $500,000 a year? But the truth is, in about 90 days, I'm going to know if they're any good or not.
Yeah.
So divide 500 by 12 is about 60 grand a year. I'm risking 180 grand. I would risk that all day. I spend that on my jet fuel in a third of a year.
Yeah. Sometimes in school, I had teachers that bored the shit out of me. And every so often, I had a teacher that was really engaging and enthralling, and I actually wanted to listen to them. My guest today, David Osborn, is super engaging to learn from. He is a very impressive entrepreneur. He is the 10th largest real estate broker on the planet. The guy has built extraordinary wealth through hard work, discipline, and a variety of other things that you'll get to learn about. But I think the biggest thing that you're going to get from this episode is lessons around how to transition from being a solopreneur to a manager, to a leader, to a wealth creator to lead many teams. I learned a ton. I took a ton of notes during this episode. I will definitely listen to it again myself. Buckle up, because this one's got a lot of tactical stuff, but it's taught in such a good way. Enjoy. David Osborn, I appreciate you coming out.
It's great to be with you, Brad Weimert. Been a while.
It has been a while.
Yeah.
So, David, there are lots of things that I want to cover with you. You are known by many as kind of a real estate mogul. You're top 10 real estate brokerages in the world. You also have a couple other facets that I want to talk about, like the mastermind group Go Abundance that you have, a fund that you run. But before we dive into those things, how did entrepreneurship start for you? What was the beginning?
Yeah, so I'm the son of a Green Beret colonel. And so there's a cliche that, that's a hard ass dad to kind of live with. And it's true. He was a hard ass. And I grew up on farms in England. We moved all the time, but my stability, I had a great uncle who had a farm in England, and he was a gentleman Wall Street guy that had a 70-acre farm. It's not like America, but it was very good property. And he was the wealthy one in our family. And he'd have these dinners, and he'd have 50 people around the big L-shaped dinner table at Christmas or Guy Fawkes night. They don't do Thanksgiving there. They do Guy Fawkes in England. And he held court. And I thought, wow, what do I got to do to be that guy? Like, what's going on with that guy? We're living in the gameskeeper's cottage on his property. So even though we were moving all the time, this was the point of stability. We'd come back into the summers and we'd be in this English cottage that was on my mom's uncle, my great uncle's property. And he was wealthy. And that seemed to be a common thread. And then I would work on the farm and I'd get little jobs. And he was really good at my great uncle Ted. He was good at giving me odd jobs, collect the eggs or, mow the yard or just different things. And then he'd pay me. And I remember kind of liking the money. Like my brother was an athlete. He was older than me. I was always on the second or third team. I'm like the JV team. And it kind of pissed me off, but I, was littler and I just didn't have the aggression my brother had. But whenever I get those monies, like I get a couple pounds or a couple quid, we'd call it back then. I was like, wow, there's a certain like freedom I can get from that. And I think early on, I just started equating money with freedom. I was like, if I have money, I'm more free. So I'm raised in a strict household with a very fun, but also very aggressive father. And as I went through college, and then now I'm in high school, I've moved to America. My dad retires. I'm 14. He comes to America. And I've been in boarding school in England from age 8. So I've been in a very strict environment. But I come to America and I'm kind of a troublemaker. I'm a little kid, so I'm kind of pushing. I don't have a place to push my energy. I'm not good on the sports field. Not bad, but not good either. And so I pushed back a lot and I got kicked out of a school. And then I got kicked out of another school, private school. So they're easy to get kicked out of. So but in the meantime, my best bud had a job bagging groceries. So I went and got a job back in groceries. And the same thing happened. I got that check and I'm like, wow, check this out. And I bought my first car. My parents split it with me. It was $1,500. So it was nice. $750 I saved up and then they matched me.
I love it.
Now I'm 16 years old. I got a car and I'm like, how did I get this car? I got it with money. And so I think there was this thing all along of like, I could work hard. Like I liked working. I was the second fastest bagger in the store.
Nice.
Although no one knew that. I just knew that in my head because I was competing with all the other baggers. There was one guy with really long arms that I was like, oh, he just beat me on that big like basket that came in. And then I started a lawn mowing company. So I'm like, now I'm 17 years old. I've worked construction. I went from bagging to construction. Got fired from my first job. So I got fired, kicked out of schools. I was just insolent. I kind of pushed back a little bit. And I pushed back against authority, probably to make up for the fact that I couldn't push back at the house very much. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own company, lawn mowing. So I did that. I mean,
let me ask you a question on the authority thing. So you push back on authority.
Right.
That's always an interesting question for me. And you just connected it to the father, right? The strict household. Do you push back on authority today the same way? And do you think it's because, is it irrational authority or is it all authority?
I think God has a good sense of humor in that I was so anti-establishment. God made me part of the establishment. You know, when you run a company with 4,000 people in it,
yep.
You are the establishment. You can't really rebel against yourself. Does that make sense? So I've certainly learned to toe the line more. Also, being in leadership, you actually realize how hard it is. It's very easy to sit in the back of the classroom and throw pieces of paper at the teacher and just bomb the class and make it difficult for everyone. And people laugh at you for doing that. It's easy to be destructive, but it's quite hard to build and run and manage something. So I have a lot more respect for leaders now. I have a respect for how difficult it is. We all point fingers and laugh at the president or whoever runs our city. But actually, if you're in that seat, it's pretty freaking hard. Does that make sense? So I have respect. I'm still innately a rebel. Like I'm innately like, I don't like to be told I can't travel or I can't go places or I have to stay in my house. Like, so there's things that happened recently that I really struggled with, and I don't trust authority, but I definitely have come back to the middle. When I was younger, I knee-jerked through against authority. I would speak back very quickly. I was just like a rebel without a clue, honestly.
Well, that was the point that I wanted to differentiate, was if it was just a reverence to authority in general, or if it was what you're saying doesn't make any fucking sense to me. So I'm not going to do it because, like today, I stopped sitting at red lights because it doesn't make any fucking sense. If there are no cars coming, I'm driving through the red light. Nice. I do that sometimes. It's not a rule for me. Yes. But if I'm running late and there's no one around, I'll pop that light. It's a rule often. And now that I have kids, I try to set a better example. But for sure, I get it. I like it. Yeah. And so now you have to make sense of the rule, right? So I don't blow through red lights because that would be stupid. That would be stupid. I stop at all of them. And if there's no traffic, I go because the rule doesn't make sense. I love it. Yeah, it really doesn't. If you're sitting on a country road and no one's coming, it's dumb. What am I doing here? It's for the idiots. Yes. And if I get a ticket periodically, I pay the ticket. And that's fine. Right. And that's the cost of having that rule set for me. Yeah. I'm okay with that. Yeah. But I think have adjusted to, I grew up with the same mentality of fuck authority. Right. And over time, it sort of transformed into fuck authority that doesn't make any sense. It's making choices that don't make sense. Yeah, I think being older, I toe the line a lot better. I have more compassion. I've had people tear my shit down in meetings and stuff where I'm like, I'm just trying to lead you guys here and make this better for all of us. And it's not easy. And you got that little troublemaker bombing you, who I used to be. So I've got a lot more respect. I understand how difficult it is. And I also don't like rules that don't make sense. I got a friend that never pays for parking. He just pays the tickets. That's my other rule. Oh, that's your other rule. Okay. I got a buddy like that too. And I've started doing that a little bit myself, but it's so easy on the app nowadays. But yes, I will sometimes do that as well. But I dig that. Yeah, I've got more respect for authority. I just know how difficult it is. I mean, think about this. The day you're elected president of the United States, 50% of 350 million people hate your guts like right away. Maybe not all of them, but a good chunk of them. And that's what life's like. So I see more of the nuances. When I was younger, anyone talked to me from a position of authority, my first reaction would be, fuck you. Who are you to tell me what to do? But I'm not like that anymore. So I've changed. That's helpful. Okay. So entrepreneurial journey, you started doing your own thing, lawn mowing, et cetera. Right. You're 17, 18, you've got a taste for money. Also, out of curiosity, and this, I just want sort of a benchmark. You referenced your great uncle? Yeah, great uncle Ted. As wealthy. Yes. Do you have any idea what that meant? I would guess for him, it would be a guess. The farm was worth a lot of money. It was in a high-end area. So imagine a farm in Connecticut, or if you don't know Connecticut, like just in a really close to town. And then he was working as a stockbroker, probably making a few million in today's money per year. My guess he was worth somewhere between 15 and 50. I know that's a big range, but I was 14 years old. So I don't really know. Got it. Okay. That's helpful. Yeah. Yeah. So that's wealthy. He had 2 Jaguars. He went to the city and then he got cancer and died. And I remember he was pretty bitter about that, angry at God that he got cancer.
at 70 something years old. So I never really got the mentorship as I grew older. And my dad was a soldier, and my dad was just tough as nails and hard as nails. But I always remember looking at my dad and Uncle Ted and going like, I think I'd rather be Uncle Ted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
My dad really wanted me to be a soldier. He's like, you could be a general. And I'm like, I don't want to be a general. I just want to go make money so I don't have to answer to anybody ever again. Now, yeah, I would say he was a good mentor for mine. And then I came to America. Long story short, I got into sales, which was cool. Because sales also, you don't really have a ceiling. My first job was computer sales, walking into a skyscraper and knocking on every door and just trying to get them to buy computer systems from my company. And then I got into real estate sales, and that was even better because there's no limit to how much, well, there is a limit, but you can make a lot of money in real estate sales.
Yeah.
And then after 3 years of that, the company I was in was very small, Keller Williams. It was expanding, and they were trying to sell franchises. And I got bored of selling. So I said, how about if I bought some franchises? And they said, sure. And so we got into buying franchises. It was really fun. My mom was also a realtor at the company, and she was my partner. And growing up, she was just a housewife. So she never worked. She worked at MI6 as a secretary, like Moneypenny. And then she got into real estate like in her late 40s or early 50s and just started killing it because she's a very hard worker. Made way more money than my dad ever did. Amazing. And then, yeah, so we partnered up. She was great. I mean, she's still great. She's 89 years old and would be a fun interview for you still today.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Maybe that's chapter 2 here. So the jump from sales into actual entrepreneurship is a big one.
It is.
And it's one that I think most salespeople think they can do and most fail at doing. Or they do in a very mediocre fashion. You might be a killer salesperson and a horrible entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because you need a lot of other skills.
Well, the story of life, Brad, is that everything that gets you to a certain point starts hampering you to get to the next point. In my experience, maybe not everything. Let's say work ethic's useful. Having a ability to set goals is useful. But salespeople, it's all about you. And it's all about you talking and persuading and influencing. And that is, the better you are at that, the more money you make. But in a business, a really great business, it becomes about other people. So it's no longer about you. So there's a saying I've always loved, I do it, we do it, they do it, is how I've created my success. So the reason I have 3 businesses, all 3 currently making me over $1 million, millions of dollars a year to me, that I'm not having to work that much on. I am paying attention, but I'm not deep in it, is because I have learned how to work through very talented guys. Each person that runs one of those businesses earns 7 figures themselves, and they run that business, and that's, they do it. But a lot of people, we do it is where you evolve to that. But a lot of people see we do it as really, I do it with a lot of little we's following them around, picking up the pieces. And so that's been my entrepreneurial journey. Now I do it. The reason salespeople I think struggle is they get so stuck on the I do it. They know how to work hard. They have big personalities, and they're just used to fixing everything and dealing with everything themselves. And that becomes an incredible weakness in building a larger entrepreneurial operation. You can build to pretty good, pretty big, and then also doing that kind of living, you're a big personality. You tend to spend a lot of money on a lot of stuff. And a lot of those guys don't have much left over.
Yeah.
They have a business that from the outside looks big and shiny.
Yeah.
They're driving the pretty car. They got the pretty house. But 10 years down the road, if it all stops, they got to find something else to go do because they haven't built anything. They haven't built any wealth or value creation or things like that. So I see that a lot in my business because we have so many amazing realtors that are just badass. Like they have more personality than me, more energy than me. They're just super impressive humans, but they just don't drive their car very well. And there's a lot of damage. There could be like tax liens. They don't pay the IRS. They don't really understand the net value of money. They only understand the gross volume, gross sales. And so that's a very interesting thing very interesting when you see a person you consider more talented than you, but they keep not performing at a higher level than you because they're missing a little piece, which is maybe the tactical piece. I don't know. It's interesting.
Tactical mindset, ego, what gets in the way of actually making those jumps to the next desire, jumps to the next true desire, to the next level? I don't know. I think it's different for different people.
Yeah. People say it's what? Power, money, or fame, right? Those are a version of the 3 things. So I think a lot of people want fame. So they want to be known. They want to be significant.
Especially today.
And that's the opposite of, to me, it's not the opposite. It can help wealth, but it's nothing to do with wealth.
It can be at odds with it.
It can be add-on. It can really It can accelerate your strategy towards building wealth. So if you're famous on Twitter or now X and you've got all these followers and you drink this right drink, they pay you for that. So that's really useful. If you're famous and you have an interview with someone and they think you're famous, they're more likely to want to be in business with you. That's additive.
Yep.
But generally speaking, you still have to have that tactical, which I think freedom and possibly power, although I've never been super driven by power, but freedom requires tactical strategies. Like my goal was to have more money coming in without me working than I needed to live. That was my number one goal. And originally I wanted to do that through residential real estate investments. So originally I was going to buy 10 properties, pay them all off, and that would pay me $100,000 a year and I would never have to work again because I was young. I thought that was a lot of money.
Yes.
But then it eventually became businesses, but it was always like, okay, how do I get to where I don't have to work anymore? And I think a lot of salespeople, they love the work, they love the grind, they love the adrenaline rush, and they just stay in that space.
So through this transition of, and I want to get a little granular, but salesperson to franchise Keller Williams offices, like of the first that were doing it for Keller Williams,
right,
to the current ecosystem where you've got all sorts of things going on. The I do it, we do it, they do it.
Mm-hmm.
Moving from one level to the next is a challenge. Like you said, what gets you to one place frequently is something you need to let go of to get to the next place.
Right.
At what point in, you can give me whatever metrics you want, head count, revenue, whatever, income, do you feel like you move from we do it to they do it?
So the first move was from I do it to we do it. And then I said it before, I'll say it again. Most people view we do it as like, see, I'm doing it and they're supporting me in doing it. But that's not we do it. That's still, in my opinion, I do it. So there was a moment where I'd opened 4 franchises and I was trying to do it all through weak managers. And I had like a mini nervous breakdown. Like I in hindsight, I would call it an identity crisis. So my identity, I was really ambitious, but who I was showing up as wasn't going to hit the goals that I had. And I tried to work harder and harder, everything from building the cubicles to fixing the computers to recruiting the managers, recruiting the agents. I was trying to do it all. And I just couldn't. And I was failing. And I had a manager that was dealing drugs and another that was an alcoholic. And I was just like kind of broken inside. And it led to shingles and stress. And at the same time, I was being trained in the company about how to hire. They were teaching us how to hire talent. They were teaching us that talent leaves clues. People that have been successful tend to continue to be successful. So if you're asking someone, tell me your life story, like I'm going to light this match and I want you to tell me the story before this match burns out of your life story. And if it's like a ups and downs, but like a leadership based story, I was the captain of the football team. And then I, started a business and I failed and I crashed and burned, but then I got up and I got into sales and I became the top salesperson. That's a person that is probably going to continue to succeed. And if you meet a person in their 40s and I'm still living with my mom and smoke weed every day and I'm eating apple pie, that's probably what they're going to keep doing. It is possible to change later in life, but mainly your story leaves clues into who you are. So that's what we were being taught. And then I noticed that I had 4 managers and one of them, each office performed at the level of the skill set of that manager. So if I had a mediocre manager, I had a mediocre business. So I'm learning all this while experiencing massive stress. And the stress, I think, was that I was doing more than I could. Like I have a good engine. I can work hard, but I can't work 100 hours a week for 10 years. Some guys I know can. I mean, I know that, who's that real estate guy out of Florida that has
Cardone.
It's
a client of ours.
Yeah. And who's that other guy up north that's in Philadelphia or whatever, that was the wine.com guy. He's
Gary V.
Yeah. So those guys work incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And I saw them in a little podcast arguing who worked harder. I wouldn't be in that competition, but I did work very hard as I could work. So we're talking 60, 70, 80 hours a week for 10 years. But I reached my breaking point. I broke and then I kind of rebirthed myself as a new person. And I just stopped doing all the little things. I stopped doing all the insignificant things. And I just did the most important activities every single day. The richest guy I knew at that time, I asked him, what's your secret of success? He said, write down the 7 most important things you got to do every day and do the top 3. Let everything else fall by the wayside, which, by the way, is something Ford said. I found, way later, I read it in another book. But so I started doing that. I prioritized everything ABC, and I just tried to do the top stuff. And all of a sudden, my results got better. I got happier, and life was better.
Beyond a Million is brought to you by Easy Pay Direct. If you're an entrepreneur and you are still using a product like Stripe or PayPal to accept payments, it is time to find out why the largest names in your industry would never consider doing that. Check out easypaydirect.com/BAM to find out more.
All right. So
Yeah. You sound like you're groaning.
I am groaning. So as one that is, currently navigating that and I'm way down the path, but when you are in sales and when it is you get the rush from doing.
Of course.
And when you want to jump to management and leadership, there has to be a change in mentality around, a forced, constructed, it doesn't just happen. You need to figure out how to get a rush or happiness or satisfaction, not from doing, but from something else.
Right.
How did you bridge that gap?
Well, again, I have this internal drive for freedom. Maybe that served me more than power or significance. So if those are the three things, fame, power, and money, freedom and money meant to me. So I started just looking at my bank account and my game became this internal game of how much wealth can I build? I was in a mastermind with Dr. Fred Gross. I met this guy, Pat Hyben, who became one of my best friends and my peer partner. We held each other accountable. He was the number one Remax agent in the world and then the number one Keller Williams agent in the world shortly after that. I recruited him over. And then, so we're 97, 98. I have kind of this breakdown as I recall. And then 99, 2000. So only in 2001, I make $1 million in a year from all these businesses I've created, maybe $1.1 million, I think it was.
And the businesses at that time
were franchises.
The
so
franchises.
Just Keller Williams and real estate. I bought some real estate, but 90% the franchises. Because I built, so if you remember, there was the crash of, I started in the business in 92 and we had this big rise all the way up to like 2005. So I really got in at a good time too. Yeah. And the timing is very important in life too.
And in real estate.
And in real estate especially. So I'm opening all these franchises and I'm struggling and I have bad managers from sort of 96, 97, 98. And I have my kind of mini nervous breakdown or identity crisis. And then I start hiring good managers and I'm being taught how to hire them. And I'm noticing the matchstick story. And then I've started all these businesses that were mediocre, but then they start getting better. So in 2001, now I've got like 6 and they're all starting to make money. And I am the majority owner of all of them. So, and I was very good at bringing in partners and equity sharing, but I would always be 50-ish percent, 60% of them. And so now they're all, let's say they're making 200,000 on average or 300,000 on average, and I'm 50%. And suddenly I make $1.1 million. And I'm like, wow, like this is from like 8 different sources of income.
Yeah.
And then I'm really learning the game of people. So that's what my game became. It wasn't like the rush of that other world. It was the rush of performing and building businesses that made me money. And it was very lonely because I couldn't really talk to a lot of people. I could talk to the other Keller people that were doing well, but they also, a lot of them, because they'd been burned before, they kind of stopped at 1 or stopped at 2. And I hadn't been burned really badly in business then. So I just kept going. Like at one point I wanted to own 100. And once I got the talent piece, I was like, I can have as big an empire as I have talented people working for me. I think also Brad being a younger brother and the youngest of 3 kids in a fairly aggressive family, maybe I just didn't need that front of the room pop as much. I could do it, but I didn't seek it. I mostly thought like, I wonder how many of these I can create. And it was a very internal game.
And so this is the jump from I to we.
This is the jump from I to we.
And was there friction moving from we to they?
Yeah. The biggest friction is feeling worthy enough to have a business that you're not really paying attention to, that you make a lot of money from. I mean, I pay attention to the numbers and what was going on with the business, but I wasn't in it every day. I didn't know which agent was mad at which agent and what deal was going bad and what deal was going good and whether the copy machine worked. I just hired somebody to do all that. And then I paid attention to the numbers and the relationship I had with that person and holding them accountable to perform and making sure I had a bench of people to replace them if they burned out. And then learning how to put the contracts in place to protect me from competition and from people stealing my people and things like that. So that was the harder part, I think, was learning all the nuances of how it can go wrong and right. I had one business with a partner. We had 0 paperwork. We just started an LLC together as 50-50. And then it went bad. And we don't even know how to get out of business. So we have this mediocre business making 60 grand a year. We don't like each other. And they sue me. So I'm like, well, screw you. I'm going to sue you back. So we get in this big fight. And, a year and a half or 2 years and 150 grand later, I buy them out for what I'd have probably paid on day one. And so these are the kind of things I started learning. And then when I read their deposition, this was the most eye-opening part. I thought they were in the wrong. And then I read their deposition. I'm like, well, this is pretty much what happened. The only difference is I thought they weren't doing well at 60 grand a year. I thought we should be making 200. And they were quite happy making 60,000 a year. So I did apply pressure and I did replace the manager and I did try to drive that business up. And in their opinion, I was disrupting their business. And so I'm not saying they were right. I'm just saying I was like, oh, it's just two sides to the story. So I learned to put the contracts right so that I would have control of the business and I could buy the people out if I needed to. I have compassion for other people. I understand most people are doing their business best. I try to always treat people well. But I learned how to put the contracts in place that enabled us to get out of business more quickly if things weren't working with a payment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The reminds me of the sentiment that is Gary Keller, I think, which is referencing contracts not as agreements, but as disagreements, because the time that they're relevant is only when you have a disagreement.
That's right. And it's all about like thinking about the divorce, right? So if you do people have these horrible, bloody divorces all the time because they didn't have a prenup. But if at the beginning, when they loved each other, they'd said, hey, honey, let's sit down and discuss what would happen if we divorced. Who would raise the kids? Then that's the time to do it. And that's what we do now in the beginning of all our operations. So you said, how does it go to they do it? So that was one learning is how do I structure it so that if I have a they, if they're performing really well, how do I reward them? If they're failing, how do I get out of business with them? And if they just want to move on and they've kicked ass for us, how do I take care of them and pay them well and look after them? Because I really believe in looking after people. And some organizations you see, they get bigger and bigger and they stop looking after their people. And I think it's the beginning of the death knell of the organization. So take care of the people, but have the cards in your hand to do so. And then on the other side of that, it's learning how to really trust other people to do a job for you, let things burn so that they fix it and you don't fix it. The 1 Minute Manager, you remember that book? I mean, it's an amazing book.
Yeah.
So the guy brings him a problem. He says,
Ken Blanchard.
Yeah. He's like, what, he's like, boss, I have a problem. The sales machine isn't working or the manufacturing machine. And the boss doesn't solve it for him. He sits there and he says, well, Brad, what do you think you should do? He goes, I don't know. That's why I came to you. He goes, well, why don't you think about it and come back with your 3 best ideas on how to solve that problem? The guy comes back. He's like, okay, what of those 3 ideas, which one's your favorite one? Okay, this one. Okay, go try that. That's 1 minute managing. Most people swoop in, fix it all for them. And guess what? Every time you solve someone's problem, you took their job back. And if you do it too often, they'll quit thinking for themselves and they'll start asking you. And my experience is, and again, this is learned. I didn't start there. I love being the significant guy that could come in and solve the problems. Oh, that agent's about to leave. Let me swoop in and buy them back or fix it. But now it's more like, let it burn and you are going to learn. If you're the right person and I let you burn something in my business, you'll be that much better next time. And it's the way I kind of pour into people is by letting them fall on their faces.
I love this.
Yeah.
So when, first off, we internally use that structure and we refer to it as 1-3-1.
Okay.
Which is 1 problem. You better give me 3 solutions and then tell me which one you want to go with.
Beautiful.
And that's how we start.
Yeah.
But if you come to me with a problem,
you better have a solution.
we have a problem.
Yes.
Yeah. The problem is not what you think it is.
That's right.
I'm not thinking for you.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's great. That's great.
It is something that is consistently needs to be managed, right? Because you have to also teach your team that is how we behave. And like you said, as soon as you slip from that structure, it goes away entirely. And then they go back to leaning on you for the solution.
That's right. It's very easy for people to lead or follow. And I think we create the culture which causes them to lead or follow. And I see all these guys in the company that are like, they bought a franchise and then they're the big dog in it. They hire a manager, but the manager really is this is the we do it where they're the little we. And it's so funny to me. I'm like, you bought a business so you could earn money and not work. But your need for significance is forcing you to stay in that business and be the man or the woman. And you're not really giving yourself the chance to multiply and spread out.
So let me give you another reason that might happen. It is scary to watch things burn when you know you can put the fire out.
It is.
So, and I know for me personally, a big part of not wanting to let things burn was my relationship with money and growing up with this mentality of money doesn't grow on trees, as opposed to money is a lever that can be used for different things and you can always make more of it.
Right.
At what point in your journey did you establish a relationship with money where you decided it's okay to watch it burn in the name of somebody else growing?
That's a great question. I think I had a certain abundance mentality already coming in. My parents definitely were the same, like money doesn't grow on trees, turn the lights off. Are you trying to air condition America? Like all the things, my dad and mom used to see how far into the summer they could go before they turned on the AC. I know, it's murder. We're like, it's March, let's set it at 63. It's probably right now, at 67 in our house. But somehow along the way of my mindset, maybe again, the rebel in me was like, well, screw you guys. But there was a little bit of me that was like abundant. And then the other thing is I built in Keller Williams, you had to have multiple franchises. We owned the region as well, the master franchise. So we had to sell franchises to stay in our development schedule to keep the region. We were building it for Keller Williams as they were pouring systems into us. I mean, the company was non-existent. It was nothing. People thought it was a paint company. And then we went out, took territory from our competitors, got great training from Keller Williams. But if I sold, and I wasn't good at selling franchises, so I ended up buying them to stay under my development schedule.
Oh, wow.
I was young and I was goofy and people didn't believe in me enough to buy them.
Hilarious.
So I bought the first 5 or 6 and then I got better at selling them and I was more credible. So then it all kind of fell in place. But now if you imagine I have 6 businesses that are going to make $250,000 a year
each,
and I'm 50% of them. Yeah, each one. If one of them, it's easier for me because one of them burning isn't the end of the world because I got the other 5 and they're all spread out. So it's not like a fire from one's going to spread to the other.
Right.
So that's part of it. I think the second part of it is, honestly, I just had a little bit of a lower level of talent than maybe you've got. Like I see guys that jump in. I sometimes would cause more problems than I would help fixing it. I remember one time asking
I'm sure I do too.
Well, I remember saying to my manager, why haven't you signed the lease? And he goes, you told me to send you the lease and you were going to review it. And I go back to my bed. And sure enough, in my inbox is this like 80-page legal lease.
Right.
But I said I wanted to read for some strange reason, even though I was a C student that got thrown out of 3 high schools. So I learned there that like I was often the bottleneck in my organization. So to let it flow. So I let things go, let them happen, let the people fail, let it burn. But having 6 was easier than 1. All my eggs weren't in one basket. I was in one basket called Keller Williams, but it wasn't like I had one giant shop that the problem could put me out of business, which would probably stress me more.
Yeah.
And then I watched my manager show up and I had this like proving ground of like who's good, who's not. You could do the same if you had a sales force. And then I would be like, oh, this manager's really good. And this manager's really bad. And I'm tired of talking to this manager because the energy would drain me. Like I could always tell if I sat with somebody and I felt depleted, they weren't good leaders, right? That's a bad sign. But I would take my good manager and I'd say, you now have an opportunity. You're leading this office.
Yep.
Here's your guy. Train him up. Some people have an amazing capacity just to pour into, let's say people are ranked on a 1 to 5. Some people have an incredible capacity to pour into a 3 and make them a 4, or pour into a 2 and make them a 3. I don't have that capacity. I need a 4 or a 5 that I'm dealing with. But if I take a 5 and I put them over a 3, they might make that 3 a 4 or a 3.5. But then I don't have to deal with it. And then I could create an opportunity for that next guy. So came this game of creating opportunities. And I got so committed to it. I learned this concept too. And by the way, there's also a risk. Sometimes you take your best salesman, I think you know this, and you make them a manager and they suck as managers.
Yeah.
Because all they know is production. And then you fuck up the relationship because it's really hard to send them back into sales.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like reading the people and having an intuition and like paying attention. But today, like I also learned from another consultant, if I hire a guy at $500,000 a year, what am I really risking? So you'd think, that's a big freaking salary. Why would it pay anyone $500,000 a year? But the truth is, in about 90 days, I'm going to know if they're any good or not.
Yeah.
So divide 500 by 12 is about 60 grand a year. I'm risking 180 grand.
Yep.
I would risk that all day. You spend that on the build out of this office space.
Right.
I spend that, on my jet fuel in a third of a year.
Yeah. I think that's an important, look, running the numbers, period, is an important exercise for entrepreneurs to do at every stage.
That was a hard lesson for me to learn. You're 100% correct.
Yeah. Until you have to get out of the way of saying, I can't do this, right? Just get that phrase out of there. And then you also have to commit to at least let me do the exercise to see what it looks like. Because you're right. You get scared by, can I afford and it depends where you are on the journey, but can I afford a $500,000 a year person? And then what's the risk mitigation there? And as you said, it's 3 months.
Yeah, I remember I was hiring my first assistant after going through this training about your life is directly in quality of the 5 people that report to you every day. Like the quality of your business life is going to be directly proportional to the quality of the 5 direct reports you have. So there was this girl I wanted to hire to work for me. And I remember I wanted to spend, it was going to be my first personal assistant. And I think I was making $100,000 in my businesses at that time. And I wanted to pay 25 and she wanted 45. So I said, okay, screw it, I'll do it. And I took a $20,000 pay cut. I went down to 80. She's almost making as much as me, but she had administered 300 doctors in a hospital. She was a badass. I mean, she was amazing. And she took my world and put me in the right place. And I began to learn, like, all I need to do is be in front of people, opportunities, and create vision. So talent, opportunities, and vision. That's my gift zone. That's all I need to do. And if people can take everything else off of me, our whole world is going to get bigger and bigger. And then I find an opportunity to build something. I find talent that can run that thing. And then I keep creating vision and paying attention to the numbers to make sure the architecture is in place for that to grow. And this woman, Kelly, she was just incredible. I'd say, everything you do, I want you to put it in an operations manual. And she wrote this whole operations manual. So because the other thing I'd seen is top performers get held hostage by their assistants. So I had her write down a 1-pager of everything she did. And then I'm like, oh, if she ever leaves me, here's the job description for the next person. But she did that for my meetings, my training events, how to run the market centers, a regional operations book, which Keller Williams then copied about half of and made it part of their operations, which was one of Gary's geniuses, taking the things from the field and putting them back into the organization. So, it was great, man. And it's become all about the people. So to this day, like I would say the number one most important thing I think in building an entrepreneurial operation is great people.
Okay. So recap here is I asked you about we to they and that movement, and some of it is in your head. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about kind of when is it okay to let it burn?
Yeah.
And you did have a different structure, but you had 6 entities, and basically you said if one of them burns, it's not the whole house.
It's not the whole house. I'm giving that manager an opportunity to kind of figure stuff out.
And it's 15% of the whole portfolio.
Correct. And today I have 14, so it's less than 10%.
Yeah. And so I think that for anybody listening to it and thinking about it, it's if you're putting the whole house at risk, maybe you're still in the space of I. Or we.
Right.
Right? It's not effective delegation, it's abdication at that point.
Yes.
And you need to know when to have that risk.
And there is the time to fire the guy. And for me, there was like one bad situation with an agent that the agent was going to leave, which is kind of like a burning fire, is one thing. If 5 agents come to me and say, this agent is the manager's playing favorites and they're referring stuff to their husband and there's like some weird stuff going on. So I'm not suggesting I let every fire burn unchecked. But I think there's a lot of fires like, there's a leaky roof or the copier's broken and they got to learn how to deal with a copier company. Like those are the kind of things you just got to let them fix it.
Yeah. So, okay. So I, we, they, I love that framework.
There's another one we didn't really touch on, which you hit on just now that I forgot on. Like the other part is me mentally, not having to apologize to my people for doing what I want to do. Like there was a part of me who always wanted to be seen as working harder than them, or like I would tell them, even my assistant sometimes, I have appointments this morning when I'm actually golfing. I had like an imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? And there was a part of me that like was embarrassed when I first bought a private plane. I was like, don't tell anyone, I'm still can be a little nervous around that. But the truth is, you just got to live your life and not make apologies to other people and not worry what anyone else thinks about you. Maybe that's easier for you. I think it's easier for some than others. But I remember in my world, there was a part like, who am I to deserve this success? Why do I get to go play golf today? I should tell everyone I'm working and like almost like living like an assistant instead of like the king. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I think the irony in that, and by the way, I very much am like that too. And I think the irony in that is that what humans relate to most is authenticity to yourself. Mm-hmm. And you can, in sales, the expression is you can say anything with a smile. But in life, you can say anything and do anything as long as you just fucking own it.
Yeah.
The moment that you're bashful, ashamed, and dip your chin down and look down, that's the moment that it gets weird.
It is weird, and it's weakness, and it's not really living into your full potential.
Agreed.
And it took me a while to learn that. And I think as I've learned it, my life's got bigger and bigger and better and better. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, life. You look at a guy like Donald Trump and he just does whatever the hell he wants and he's still hanging in there. Or Elon Musk, he's a perfect example.
Yep.
He's got every reason to shut up. He owns publicly companies like X that's going to lose He just does whatever he wants and he's done just fine.
Yeah.
And that's been a lesson I had to learn as well. So I had to become the person. And then there's another piece, like you just have to be willing for the universe to show up through you in a big way. Does that make sense? Like, I don't think it's me. It's me getting out of my way as much as anything. Like, I believe there's got to be an Elon Musk. There's got to be a Richard Branson. I believe that when a tree is planted, it just freaking grows and it becomes a giant tree. And it's never like thinking as an acorn, like, I wonder if I'm too big of a tree, or I wonder if I think for me, a lot of what I've had to do is just getting out of my own way. And then I said earlier, vision, people, and opportunity. The vision is just having a massive vision of what's possible and not really worrying about how it's going to show up. Just let it show up. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And some of it's abstract. And I think that's the challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs, specifically A-type people.
Yeah.
Like me.
Right.
That are like, yeah.
Right.
But how the fuck does it happen?
Right.
Right. And so on your journey, and some of this, I think, the stories that you're telling about your path are really helpful because it shows people how it happened and some of the mindset behind it that helps facilitate it.
Right.
Well,
I think the thing is the drive is to be crazy ambitious. Like I was very ambitious for financial freedom. Very. So then if I'm creating this vision of like, I'm going to be at 100 million net worth by this date, and I'm going to have 10 million a year in income, and I'm going to have 5 guys that report to me to make $1 million a year. That seems abstract because it's not specific as to how, but it's a pretty clear, driven vision that I had for years and years and years. And by the way, when I'm telling people that I want 5 guys that make $1 million a year, and there's some guy that thinks they should make $1 million a year, I'm kind of putting something out there in the universe that might attract talent to me. And I realize it's not, okay, we're going to start a payment processing company or a real estate company, and we're going to add 500 agents and then 1,000 agents. Like, it's not that kind of scaffolding, but it's still a mental scaffolding and a mindset that you're willing to live into. Who was it that said, be bold, there's genius and boldness, or something like that. And if you try bold things, mysterious forces will come to your aid. I mean, my experience is that it might be airy-fairy, it might be true and unrelated. But the more I've lived into this bigger vision, the more talent has been attracted to me, the more I've been abundant and let go of little things, the bigger my life's been permitted to become. So I don't know. It is weird. It is a bit abstract.
Yeah, but I also think to that point, you gave a couple examples of how it might work, right? So I think that a lot of the time, an exercise that I like to go through is, for those abstractions and for those things that are airy-fairy, what is a rational reason that it might happen?
Right.
And that exercise for me helps me get along with a wider group of people, first of all, because I stop shooting down somebody's belief system just because it's not directly in line with mine. And it helps me understand it. So one, to the point of being bold, one reason could be you just do more fucking reps. You are doing more when you're putting yourself out there.
Right.
And so it's possible when you do more, you're more likely to come across the right opportunity.
And I think for me, the vision meant goals every year, like 60, 70 goals, a 5-year vision, a 10-year vision, and a 40-year vision. That's compelling in and of itself.
Yeah.
And the goals would be around health, nutrition, intellectual, personal growth. One of my goals was always to speak 20 times a year, do 20 podcasts. And then one of my goals that was the most driving in business, have 5 guys report to me that make $1 million a year. Now, one day I'm teaching in Canada to a group of people. And I said to the group, I've got 2 guys so far and I'm looking for the third. And this has been a mantra of mine, 5 guys that make $1 million a year. Because you know what happens when a guy makes $1 million a year, Brad? How much accountability do you think you need for a person that makes $1 million a year? 0.
Yeah.
Nobody makes $1 million a year that isn't freaking driven. You don't have to call him. You know the guy that makes $75,000 a year? Hey, where were you Monday? Oh, I have a doctor's office. You were partying all weekend, you dumb lying son of a gun. You just didn't come to work because you're fucking lazy. But the guy that makes $1 million a year wants to make $5 million a year, and they're driving, right? So anyway, I do this speech up in Canada, and this guy comes up to me afterwards and goes, I'm number 3. And I don't know what he's talking about because I already forgot what I said. He goes, I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm the 3rd guy that's going to work for you and make you a million, make $1 million. And I used to say, I pay them $1 million, they make me $2 million because it's a covenant contract. That's how it works. We're going to build a business big enough for there to be $3 million in profit. They'll get $1 million and I'll get $2 million. So I make $2 for every dollar they make, but I create the opportunity. So he comes up to me and says, I'm number 3. Well, long story short, the entrepreneurial mastermind business that I own today, he was influential in building it. And I think I made $2 million from it last year.
Amazing.
Now, we were partners for a while and he wanted to be bought out. So we paid him a very fair price. He made hundreds of thousands of dollars and he's doing his own thing and we're still friends to this day. But I just thought of that as you were saying, it's abstract, but it could create opportunities. There's a lot of other pieces in that story, but without getting lost, that's the bottom line of what happened. He came up to me and said, I want to be in your world. We built a friendship. This opportunity showed up. He'd been with Tony Robbins a long time, so he knew how to kind of step into that opportunity. His name's Rock Thomas.
Yep.
And then that business got created with some other partners. And today it's $13 million last year in revenue and on its way to 19 this year.
I love it. So I want to get, that's where I want to go is the I, we, they. At some point, and this is both kind of a wealth creation moment and a lifestyle moment and also a vision and goal setting thing. So you talk about 10 years and putting in 60, 70, 80 hours a week for 10 years.
Right.
And this is all around building out the Keller Williams ecosystem.
Correct.
Largely to produce income. But you have this idea in your head also, you need a mechanism to pay for all your expenses without income.
Correct.
And so you start investing in single family homes?
I started investing in single family homes and graduated to multifamily homes. And that would be the fourth leg of my world, which is kind of like a family office, which everyone's heard of now. When you make a bunch of money, you got to put it somewhere and that becomes a business in and of itself. But really, it was really just Keller Williams franchises and then master franchises. So I ended up buying 5 master franchises. I was deep into that ecosystem. I loved it, still do, but we were being trained every day to how to build these franchises. The best ideas in the field would go up to corporate. They would embody them and put them back out to the field. We were helping one another. We were running around the country, taking territory. So that was where the majority of that wealth was coming from.
And what's your income like at this point?
I mean, it's 8 figures, like a good year. I think the best year I ever had was 16 million in a year. And it can drop as low as 7 million. Like it's not very good right now because of interest and
you don't
interest
say
rates and all that.
Yeah. At 2024, February 20th right now. Yeah.
But I still think I'll make pretty close to 10 million. We'll see this year. And there's, everything has a cycle and it's just been such a fun journey. But anyway, keep going. Let's just keep going.
So I asked because I think that it's really important for some people to anchor to a specific thing and say, hey, now's the time.
Right.
And for other people, it's not. And by the way, your number for when it happens isn't everybody else's.
Right.
But the question is, at what point did you say, hey, I need to start diversifying?
Yeah, great question.
Or splitting my focus to something else?
So really, it was 12 years. I can tell you because I started in real estate in 94. I got into sales. For 3 years, I worked my ass off. Then at the end of 96, really beginning 97, I went up to Dallas, started opening franchises. I came back in 06 to Austin and went to work for corporate. And really, it was almost like 15 years of just working as hard as I could. But then
why'd you do that? Why'd you come back and work for corporate? You had this whole empire of running franchises, regions, and you go back and work for fucking corporate?
I know.
And you're making $10 million a year or something?
Back then, it was probably more like 4.
I mean,
yeah, it was a lot of money. Yeah. But I had great people. And so I was continuing to follow my path of creating opportunity for people. And I hired a guy to kind of run it. So now I was stepping back from running the 14. So if you think of it, that I always said there's individual managers, but I'm kind of running the fleet. I'd say I would say like I'm the admiral of the fleet. People would say, thank you for giving me the opportunity. And I'd say, well, you shouldn't thank me because you're the captain of a battleship and I'm the admiral of the fleet. And we're going to go into battle. And if you get sunk, if you get killed or lose, I'm going to replace you as the captain of that battleship. But if you win, you're going to get medals, honor, glory, and opportunity. So that's it. Don't thank me. Just go perform. But then I replaced myself as the admiral. So I had a new admiral running the fleet. I wanted to open a mortgage and title company. Keller Williams hired me as the president of core services to do mortgage and title. So I was figuring they'll pay me. I created a plan where I could make $1 million a year if I hit my numbers. And I figured they'd be paying me and I would be learning what I was trying to do in North Texas anyway, which was throughout the mortgage title company.
Got it.
Then I'm there.
Instead of just doing it all on your own, which you had to do anyway.
I had to do it anyway. And I still had a team in place to do it through.
Got it.
We had a mortgage company up there. But this is '06. You know what happened in '06, right? '07 was the big crash. So I'm back in Austin.
I might have some battle scars from that.
Yeah, that was a tough one. All of that stuff crashes, but my dad got cancer. My fierce Green Beret father. So it's like almost a God thing. God brought me back to Austin. I wasn't fit for corporate because in my world, I was used to be telling people what to do and they did it. And in corporate, you tell someone what to do and they go ask. So I was the president of core services, but it didn't seem to matter that much. There was a CEO or somebody else, and it would all just get lost in this atmosphere of that world for me. I'm sure when Gary says to do something, it gets done, and maybe the CEO of the time, and for me, it was just confusing. It was a murky place, and there was politics and things that I couldn't really grasp. So, but then my dad gets cancer anyway, and I want to nurse him. So '08, he's dying of cancer. And I basically worked 20 hours a week. First time I just shut the brakes down on work in 15 years.
Wow.
And from 94 to '08, whatever number of years that is. And then I was like, I'm going to be with my mom. I'm going to be with my dad. I'm going to work 20 hours a week. And now I had this guy that I'd hired to be the admiral in North Texas. And this was the biggest shocker, right? I thought, it's going to slip a little because I'm not there. But when I replaced myself in '06 and '07, just right through the roof. Like it just kept going up.
Wow.
Then '08, it crashed. '08, '09. But that was more because of the market. So then I was learning also, first off, I spent a year working 20 hours a week and really nursing my dad all the way to the grave, which I really am proud of. I don't regret that one bit. I have my daughter, Bella, with my wife, Tracy. So there's a lot of personal changes. And then we went through this massive crash. And when the crash happened, and we come way down, like we're down 60% in revenue and profits are down 75%. I began to realize, and this is my new learning as you get more mature, is the market is bigger than any of us. And then when the market's booming, that's why I say I got in '94. The market went all the way up from 92 until 2007 or so, the market went up. So I was lucky there was a timing component. And I've seen that over and over again in my life now where you can't be bigger than the market. So you can have a manager, you think, oh my gosh, this manager's made me an increase of 30% a year for the past 8 years. Then the market drops 50%. And if they're really, really good, you drop 40%. So you can't really measure it in the way I used to think, which is like, just get me 20% growth a year and I'll consider you a B+ player. Get me 30% a year and I'll consider you an A+ player. So the market crashes. My dad dies. I have a baby. And my life's in a whole different place. My income goes way down. From like 3.8 million down to like 1.8. No one in the world would be sorry for me except me. I feel sorry for me, but no one else does. But then it stabilizes. And I start, in like 2000, I think 9, I start investing. 2010, I go in a little more. And by 2011, again, intuition being in the business, I'm like, real estate is mispriced. It's still scary. People don't remember. It's still scary. You think the whole world's going to end. All the banks are going to still die.
Right.
There's still a lot of blood flowing in the streets. But it's becoming clear to me that building that sold for $6 million last year that's now won't sell for $2 million is mispriced. You couldn't build it for $4 million. So I start buying stuff. And then I go heavily in 11. In 2012, I go all in and I build a business buying distressed assets. And I built a business buying distressed homes, single family homes.
I want to highlight something there because I think that when you say it's mispriced, in real estate in particular, the most common, let's go residential for a moment, mechanism for value is comps, right? Comparable property.
Right.
And you have to at some point trust yourself. And what you did was use a different comp, which was, can I fucking build it?
Right.
And that is a much more rational approach than does the neighboring property sell for this value or has it sold for this value? That's not relevant. It's not that relevant.
No, there was definitely a dawning on me that really was probably the biggest buy signal. By 2013, it was the biggest buy signal I've ever had in my body. My body's like, buy everything. And I didn't know any rich people and I didn't have any access to money, but we just started buying the best we could. I raised money from buddies. And actually I got that from Sam Zell. So again, to give credit where credit's due, Sam Zell said he always tried to buy property at 40 cents of replacement cost. So I never wanted to be a slumlord, but that resonated with me. You could feel the market coming back. I had a coast to coast representation through Keller Williams. Interest rates were crazy low. And there was just this scar tissue from the collapse that was causing everyone to hesitate. So I even taught my agents, like, go buy real estate now. Why? In 2012, I taught a class, why now that might be the best time in your life to buy real estate.
Man.
And about 15 of them, like I taught hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands, but I know about 15 bought real estate, and those ones come up to me all the time like, thank you so much. That was such great advice. Thank you for telling me. But most people don't take action in life. That's one of the most frustrating things about life. So then I'm buying all these assets, and then a guy comes to me and says, hey, if you buy the debt on real estate, you get an even better price because there's less buyers. So this guy came to me with this proposal. I hired him. And by the way, I'd learned by now that lesson of like, hire people, give them an opportunity, because now I have enough money. So you keep trying to find the guy with the ambition and you give them an opportunity. And most of them fail, but every now and then one of them succeeds. Now, this guy didn't succeed, funnily enough, but I'm paying him $80,000 a year. He got me all the paperwork to be approved so I look like a lender that can buy other loans, right? It's a process. I got FDIC approved so we could buy bulk homes or whatever, the FHA approved maybe. And we go through all this paperwork. We get that done, but this guy could never pull the trigger. We bought one set of assets, but then I hire another guy away from Andy Beal. Andy Beal's a billionaire in Dallas. And he'd hire 100 MBAs, analyze a bunch of stuff, fire them all, hire them back, analyze a bunch of stuff, fire them all, and he's worth like 12 billion, right? But one of those guys comes to me and I hire him, and then we built a business called Security Lending, buying distressed loans. And we bought $120 million worth of loans and probably made $35 million on those loans. Unfortunately, It went away, but that was a business we created as well. And then meanwhile, I'm buying all these single family homes. So I buy about 800 single family homes, maybe 1,000. We sell most of them. I kept 100. In hindsight, I should have kept 200 or 300. And we were building a business, getting ready to go buy 1,000 homes a year. Then suddenly in 2013, the market just shifts. All the big guys get in, BlackRock and and they start buying everything at prices we thought were crazy because we're on the ground. We know it. And they would buy these homes and leave them vacant for a year, which doesn't work. You need to rent. You need to turn them, right? But the truth was they knew something we didn't, which again, the market was about to go up. They knew there was a tailwind. And then even those homes they left vacant for 2 years, they still made money on because the market went up, as you know, from 2013 till today. Real estate's probably up 200%, and you're using leverage, and they're able to get leverage at like 2 and 3 and 4% when we're paying 4 and 5 and 6%.
Yeah.
So that market, that business went away. Still had my distressed debt business, but now I bought a bunch of assets. The market recovers. All my Keller Williams stuff goes up. All this family office stuff that I bought in distressed debt, and suddenly I'm pretty rich. And that's when I was like, oh, I'm suddenly like 2013, 2014. I'm like, yeah, I'm worth $40 million. Then I joined Tiger 21, and that's when I started investing in other opportunities. And that until then, I was all focused on only what I did. So 1994 till 2014, 20 years, just all in on single family or real estate of various kinds.
I love it. That's super helpful. And in 2014, and this is a very logical segue here, Tiger 21, for those that don't know, is one of several longstanding traditional mastermind groups where there are financial minimums that you need to get into it. So it's a significant vetting process.
I think it's 20 million today.
And is it dependent on location? Like YPO is dependent on location. Tiger 21 is structured differently
across the board, but they have groups that you have to be, you can set your own group guidelines. It's only 15 people per chapter.
There you go.
So there are people that have, got to have a G5 in it to be in the chapter. That might be YPO, but there's like, and then I joined another group recently that's R360 that's 100 million minimum to be in it. So yeah, there's like, I was a terrible student, got thrown out of 3 high schools, C student most of my life, got out of college with a 2.3 GPA. But that's the other thing. I've been a student of life. Once I got into business, like I'll spend 150,000 a year on education every single year. And I have for 25 years since I could afford it.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of those questions is, what does that mean since I could afford it? And the same thing is true of the transition to investing in other things. It's what are the points in life where you allow yourself as the driver to say, now is the time to shift focus, diversify, however you want to look at it.
Right. Yeah. So for me, it was 40 million, but it was partially because I joined a group, which Tiger stands for the Investment Group for Enhanced Returns for the 21st Century, Tiger 21.
I didn't know that.
So they show us deals every week, and you're getting more sophisticated in your analysis of deals, but I did a lot of stupid deals. So as soon as I got in, I was like, oh, I'll put some money in that, put some money in that. I would bet if you took, I probably put 20 million in a lot of different deals over the 10 years I was in Tiger. And I bet the return on that would be no better than what I would have done with that money by myself. Probably almost slightly worse. But I had more fun. I made a bunch of stupid stuff like dog food and like tech. And I had one tech fund go really well. So that one's been kind of put in $1 million and got at one point 15 million out, but it's kind of downtrended to about 7 million because I didn't sell everything. But still 1 to 7 is really good. You can't do that in real estate in a 5-year period.
Yeah.
But I have a bunch of others that went to zero. Put 2 million in a deal that went to zero. Started another business that went to zero with $1 million. Now, okay, so here I'm in the journey. I bought all these assets. One thing I realized is like if in 2013 I'd had 100 million, I could have turned it into 300 million. But I didn't have any money.
Through real estate.
Through distressed debt was actually the bigger play. But yes, distressed debt on real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So you think about the real estate. There's a real estate home that was selling for 6 million. They're selling it for 2 now, and you know you couldn't build it for 4. So that's one analysis. But now all of a sudden you have a multifamily apartment that's, has a $10 million note on it that's worth 4 million today. It's 50% vacant. But the bank's trying to get that off the books, so they'll sell it for 2.7 million. That's what I started doing. So you buy the note, and then you'd call the owner and say, "Hey, you owe me 10 million. I know you can't pay that. Can you pay 3.5 million? Or do you want to give me the property? Or if I really like the property, hey, I'll give you 50 grand to sign all my papers and give me the property and go away." So cash for keys. Only foreclose if they're jerks. Like I always try to treat people well. I think treating people well is so important. I mean, we're only here once on earth, so I just try to treat people well. So then I started meeting wealthy people. Tiger was one of the reasons I joined Tiger, is full of wealthy people. Then I started a private equity firm because we were buying this distressed debt. So of that 120 million in face value of debt that I bought that we made 35 million, I probably raised half that money or maybe 2/3 of that money. I was the other third or half. I can't exactly remember. We did 8 funds, never lost money on any of those funds. The best return was like 40%. The worst one was probably 10%. That was at the very end, maybe 8%.
Are you still doing them now?
So then that got me into private equity, and I had a partner, and we didn't see eye to eye on how to run the business. A lot of respect, but we got out of business. Still respect, but no, not in business. So I started my own private equity firm. That guy didn't work out, my first CEO, but we tried really, really hard. We got 2 years in. I had to hire another guy from another company, and now that private equity firm is starting the S curve. It's doing very well.
So it's been around since 14.
I was in with somebody else in 13 as a partner. At first, they were helping me raise money. Then we started a business probably in 16. We got out of business in 18. I started mine in 18. So now it's 6 years old. But I've been in the business now for almost 10. And I think it takes 10 years to get good at anything, really. Like, again, that's a rule of thumb, but I think there's some truth to that. And I think it takes 10 years for a business to get great. There are exceptions, and I know in tech it can be different, but it just takes time in the businesses I do to learn all the nuances and what has to happen. And there's really no way to learn them. There's no way to learn private equity except by doing it. But now we've got the right guy. And by the way, the guy that I had before, good guy, but just not a good CEO, but said all the right things, like charismatic, big personality, but didn't get anything done he said he could do, but you'd have believed he could do it. Like everyone believed him because he's just so confident.
Right.
Hired another guy who's more intellectual and much less kind of in your face, but works his butt off. And took like a year or 9 months to get him to come over, got him over. Took another year for him to get familiar and get his confidence. But he's so good. He's so good at the structure piece, the piece you're talking about, the getting the numbers right, having the spreadsheets, really getting into the mechanics of each and every deal. And now that business, we're about to raise our third fund, which we have a pre-commitment of 75 million. The first fund was 32 million. The second fund was 50 million. We did a bunch of sidecars. That's how we got to our 200 million in equity and maybe 400 or 500 million in assets. And then this new fund will be 75 million if these guys come through. But they've already put about 10 million with us. And it's just been such an interesting journey and a further validation that you hire the right guys, you pour resources into them, you pay attention, and then you let them run. And so that business, I think, is on really solid footing.
So we had a pivot point here, which is the transition between these two things. You mentioned Tiger 21. Mm-hmm. And the other business you have is GoBundance. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that it did 13 million last year, on track to do 19 this year. GoBundance is sort of a less traditional format of a mastermind than Tiger 21. Mm-hmm. And it has, I want to talk about the structure and format, but first I want to talk about the role that sort of community, masterminds, relationships have played in your life, because that came at this transitional element from, hey, a 20-year chapter of building one business isn't closing, but you've opened the door to other things. Right?
Yeah.
What role did Tiger play definitively, and what role do masterminds play ongoing with you?
So in Tiger, until I got to Tiger, I only knew Keller Williams people who were successful. I'm a son of a soldier. It's not like I grew up. I mean, my great uncle, but he's dead, and his kids didn't do well like he did. So that was like, he died when I was 19 or something. So it's not like I'm surrounded by wealthy people. I knew some wealthy people that like were clients of my mom's, who was a real estate agent or whatever, but I didn't know him. I joined Tiger 21, and suddenly I'm in a room with, a dozen successful guys that made their money in something other than residential real estate sales. That was a big eye opener for me. I'm like, oh, because I was deep in the Kool-Aid and deep in the this is the way, and this is the way everyone knows.
And how old are you then?
I was 43, kind of your age, right at your age. It was a big eye opener for me, really. It was, because I'd only known people in real estate. So I knew multifamily guys that had bought a Keller Williams master franchise. I knew people that had bought offices that were builders. I knew a guy that had student housing that had bought Keller Williams. So the wealthy guys I knew in Keller Williams had made money in real estate, and had bought Keller Williams as an additive to their world. But I hadn't met anyone outside of real estate. Suddenly I meet a guy that has, like a tech company, and somebody that did jet aircraft engine disassembling and selling. And now I know a guy that's got a health fund. So that was a big eye opener, that there's more than one way you can make money. And then,
That's the topo for you.
Yeah, that's the topo. So then that was a big aha. And then the masterminds for me have been everything. Like I would say, even going through Fred Gross when I was at Keller Williams, or going through the masterminds Keller Williams taught, like your peers are so important. I think you learn more from your peers than your teachers. So Pat Hyben being my right-hand guy, my peer partner for so many years, since 1997, and him becoming financially free. And I'm like, God, if that guy can do it, I can do it. Like, you begin to realize in GoBundance, we have now 1,000 members, and they're not, I have a friend who runs a $7 billion healthcare fund. He's a freaking genius. He went to Stanford at age 15.
Wow.
He's the exception. The 1,000 guys I know in GoBundance, just like me, are just scrappy. You're scrappy. You've got the heart of a lion. You want something. You got a bigger vision for your life than what everyone else, has for their lives. You're just not willing to compromise and work for the man and then enjoy your weekends. You actually want to build something. And it's a lot more about the want to than about the naturally gifted ways of being. And that's super compelling and super contagious. You hang out with a guy like Rock Thomas and Tim Rode and Mike McCarthy, and they want to get up to something in life, and that's contagious. So I think peers are possibly more important than almost anything. And if your buddies all just want to play video games and watch the Super Bowl and get drunk, that's probably what you're going to do. And if all your peers and friends want to build big businesses and be financially free and have multiple homes and fly around in a jet, at least you got a chance to do that. But if you're on an island unto yourself, it's really hard to think bigger than your own island. Does that make sense? So I'm a big fan of peers and masterminds, and I'm in a bunch of them, and I've joined a bazillion. I was in YPO for a while, and I was in Tiger. I just dropped out after 10 years. I'm looking at this family office network, which is 200 million and above to be in it. I'm in one called R360 that's 100 million. And again, I learned from those people. I spent 60 grand to go hang out with Richard Branson on Necker Island. And you know what I learned is the energy of Richard Branson is so clearly the energy of an entrepreneurial predator. And he cares, and he wants to make a difference in the world. But when he looked me in the eye, when I was in the Serengeti, a lion looked at me in the eyes. I was sitting on the edge of my car looking at a lion kill, and the lion looked up at me. And I remember I was like, that thing wants to eat me. Like, right now, it's like, would that guy taste good? It was looking right at me that way. That's how Richard Branson looked at me. It's like the eye of the tiger. And so like, that's compelling, and it's attractive, and it can infuse your soul with your energy. So that's why I love masterminds. I love the GoBundance guys because they're also scrappy and hardworking. And the other thing I learned about Richard Branson that was amazing as a small segue was he was sitting with his assistant one day. So I went and asked him, hey, can I sit here? She gave me dagger eyes, like she didn't want me around. And he said, yes, just don't talk. So I said, okay. So I sat down and listened. Thank God I brought my journal. And all he was doing was going through email after email with her and telling her what to say. One of them was to Sheryl Sandberg. And I remember he was like, yeah, tell Sheryl, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't have to do my emails anymore. So I came back from Richard Branson experience having paid the 60 grand. And I just said to my team, you guys are doing my emails. I'm not looking at another. I might look at it on my phone, but I'm not answering them. And you're going to guess what to answer. Most of them, 90% of the time, if you receive an email from me, it's my team guessing what they would say. Now, my texts are still my last private castle or citadel, which I might even give those up. Because, so that's what Richard Branson taught me. And I'm like, how much has that been worth? Well, that was, I don't remember when that was, like 2015 or something. It's been worth hundreds of hours that I've gotten back and not stressing about stupid emails. And now that even if there's a bad news email on Friday, my team doesn't tell me till Monday. So I don't stress all weekend. We got sued by somebody. I don't stress all weekend going, that son of a gun, I can't believe he's suing me. I'm just like enjoying my weekend. I'm oblivious. And then on Monday, when I can actually do something about it, then we have the talk. We get the lawyers on the phone. We try to work everything out. So, it's created a lot of peace in my life. And that's an example of what masterminds and proximity and peers do for you.
I love that. Well, I've got 1,000 questions about that. I also want to respect your time here.
Oh, shit. Is it 2 already? I'm supposed to be at the gym.
We've been going for a minute. I do want to at least spend a minute on wealth.
Yeah.
Because it can't wait.
Right. Yeah.
So you wrote a book by that title.
Wealth Can't Wait. Yeah.
And it's a great book. I have, as you do, hundreds of friends that have written books.
Yeah.
And most of them I don't say that about.
Yeah. It is a good book. I thank you for saying that. I mean, it doesn't flow like the E-Myth or whatever, but there's a lot of wisdom in that book.
It's incredibly tactical.
Yeah.
It's strategic at the same time.
Yeah.
It is an important map for a way to build wealth.
There's good stuff in there. I probably should have written 4 books instead of 1, but it took me 7 years to write that book. When my dad was dying, I was like, I need to write a book. And it took me 7 years to finish that because I am such a bad writer. And I'm like a stream of consciousness blurter.
Well,
but it's good. I think it's good too. I don't know that it's great because of the flow, but I think if you are working out, because we did it in so many small chapters, you can just listen to nugget after nugget after nugget.
I listened to it running. I vividly remember listening to it running in California. I was in Carlsbad.
Nice.
Yeah, running California, listening
Probably running a mountain like Everest or something like you tend to do.
And it was great. But I think, people read books. I read books for different reasons. And this one is a very prescriptive one.
Yeah.
If they're, and I'm going to go for an absolute because they're fun and they're rarely true. But if there is a, fundamental principle of investing, you waited until you were at 40 million net worth to invest, which is probably not necessary for people.
Well, to be fair, I was dabbling in the .com craze and I got burned. So it kind of spooked me because I was making a bunch of money on .com companies.
Yep.
And then people started asking me for advice because I wear glasses. They think I'm intelligent. And I said no forever. And then late 1999, I was like, okay, I'll tell you guys what I know. And then I had a little group together and I was telling them, and then the shit blew up and I realized I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. So I got really spooked by Wall Street. So I was investing only in me, in real estate and things I understood. And I quit because I got burned a little bit. And when I say burned, a few $100,000, because I wasn't worth that much in 99, 2000. Remember in 2001, I made 1.2 million, but it was like my first year of making money and all my money was going back into launching market centers. And then I told people and I felt like an idiot. I was like, yeah, I thought I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know shit. So I just went away from investing in things I didn't understand.
So let's not look at your wealth strategy now.
Right.
And let's take it to the people that are, making $1 million, a few million a year. At that point, what do you think a functional wealth strategy is?
Yeah. So here's what I would view you got employees, your money is also an employee. Dollars are employees and they should go to work every day and earn you 10 cents on the dollar. So every dollar you're not putting into your business or in your personal growth, which the best investment you can make is in yourself. But then think of your money as employees and they got to be working. And if you put them in an investment that doesn't pay you, you should fire that investment. And it could be through growth or through cash flow. I've always loved cash flow. But that's the way, and you can't build, wealth has a gravity to it. The more you have, the more you make. And it's funny, I could make $1 million on investment, which is the money I told you proudly that I made in 2001. I wouldn't even notice it today. it would be great, but it's not like moving my needle. Does that make sense? And it's almost easier than it used to be because I have a lot of capital, so I can make a lot of mistakes. But my point is that early on, you've got you gotta accumulate wealth, because wealth has a gravity to it. The more you have, the more you make. And the way you do that is by saving some money and putting it to work for you. And you can put it to work in real estate. You can put it to work in dividends. You could do in the SPANG or the top 7, whatever they call it, the mighty 7 tech stocks. But it's got to go to work, and you've got to put it to work for you. And there's a risk factor. Like, I think real estate is a low risk. I think you should succeed in 9 out of 10 real estate investments. Starting a business is high risk. Probably 1 out of 20 businesses makes any money. The stock market in general, like index funds, pretty low risk. If you're in the Vanguard 500, you should probably make 8 or 9% a year. But if you want to take high risk, you go into like Facebook and those other ones, maybe you make 30% a year, but maybe you lose 50%. But at the end of the day, your money has to be working for you. And the more you can save, earn, invest, save, earn, invest, earn, save, invest, earn, save, invest, the sooner you're going to get to wealth. And there's not a single person in this world that's a billionaire that doesn't have $1 billion worth of investments or assets. Otherwise, you couldn't be on that $1 billion list. And then the best way to make money is by starting a business that succeeds, but it's also a really, really good way to lose a lot of money. So you've just got to decide your temperament, who you are, where you are in life. Real estate, I think, is the best way for the everyday person to make money. Most people would say 50% of net worth is in their house. And I'm always like, why do you only own one house? If 50% of your wealth is in a house, why do you own one? Why don't you own 5? But then you want to buy cash flowing real estate. And the risk about what we're talking about investing here is like, it's the 10-year thing again. You've got to spend 10 years doing this to learn at it and get good at it. So whatever I say on this podcast doesn't matter, because they have to listen to it over and over again and make the mistakes and do the right things for 10 years. So I guess the number one thing to remember is there's no one that's wealthy that doesn't have wealth. And the way you have wealth is by earning, saving, and investing in something, yourself, a business, or real estate, or the stock market. But you've got to play that game to get to financial freedom.
What I think I heard is that you need to understand the investment vehicle that you're investing in.
Correct. Very much so. And businesses are my favorite, but I see so many people fail. So I'm not just because I've gotten lucky in a few. By the way, I failed in dozens, but I failed when I had enough money to be able to afford to fail. Early on, when I took the franchises, if I'd have failed then, it would have been a whole different story for my entire life, I'm sure.
So early on, it's pick a vehicle
and just go.
And double down on that vehicle.
Yes, for 10 years maybe.
And understand it.
Yes. Become the expert in it. Then you have an inside advantage, because when you know it, you have an inside advantage. In 2012, I had an inside advantage on real estate as a whole, especially residential real estate. And I knew it was mispriced with 99% certainty. But I wouldn't have done that and known that if I hadn't spent 10 years in the industry already.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. David.
Brad, it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been great, man. It's always great.
Yeah.
I don't see you enough.
I'm missing my workout right now.
Let's get you to it. Where do you want to point people, if anywhere?
You can buy Wealth Can't Wait. You can go to I am David Osborn at Instagram, but I'm really not trying to be upfront anymore. I'm just enjoying my life. And
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, I appreciate you carving out time, man.
It's been great. Good to see you.
You too.
Love it. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed doing it. I need your help. There are 3 places you can find Beyond a Million. The podcast itself, beyondamillion.com, which has some cool free resources, including a free course. And we finally launched the Beyond a Million YouTube channel. I would love it if you would go there and subscribe. And if you don't want to, you still would probably enjoy seeing the visual content. Check it out, youtube.com/@Beyond a Million.